always know if you're following along. Just because I see a little bit of a glow in front of your face, you could be doing something else. But I'd love for you to be able to follow along God's Word as we look at Job chapter 1 and the first part of chapter 2 today. And if you didn't bring a Bible, you are more than welcome to grab a KWC Bible, and I'll even give you some help if you're grabbing one of those. It's page 359. And as you're turning there, maybe taking out your teaching notes and getting your pen ready, help me out. Fill in the blank here. Help me out with this statement. The struggle is real. Almost everyone that I heard said the struggle is real. Maybe you've heard that, you've certainly felt it or thought it, right? The struggle is real. And it's become a hashtag on Facebook and Twitter and other places. The struggle is real. Sometimes it's parenting. The struggle is real. Parenting adolescents. The struggle is real. Parenting toddlers. The struggle is real. There are other words, though, that we can fill in the blank with. The struggle is overwhelming. Might be a word that some would use. Suffocating. Might be a word that some would use. Never ending. Might be a word that some would use. Some may say the struggle. What struggle? Some would say, and fill the blank in, the struggle is, and you, like when they have a hurricane come up, you've got a name for your struggle. And maybe it's Michael, or Bob, or Joe, or Josephine, or Katrina, or maybe it's cancer. Or maybe it's PTSD. Maybe it's bankruptcy. Maybe it's divorce. But your struggle has a name. And when you think of the struggle, you feel that's just there. There's a name. There's something that kind of embodies what the struggle is all about. Whether maybe it's a person. The struggle is, and here's the realities. Oftentimes our struggles do have a relational connection to them. There's a struggle with coworkers. We're having a hard time at work. My boss is just always on my case. I can't please him or her at all. And there's this struggle. And so what do we do? Is there any hope? Where's God in this? So if we can learn from Job, I think there's some amazing hope for us moving forward. But understanding that sometimes the struggle is a struggle. Sometimes we have to struggle through. And so we're going to take a look at this, and we're going to get real. I mean, Job is a real story about a real man that had real life issues. And as we look at the book of Job, you may end up going, whew, I thought I had problems. I mean, wow. I don't have any complaints now. And that's not the purpose of looking at Job. Although looking at Job, I think we can be able to say, okay, if this guy can push through, if this guy can trust God and work through things, and did Job doubt? Yes, he did. In fact, next week we'll plan to look at how we deal with doubt. How do we wrestle with doubt? How do we overcome doubt in our lives? Because that's a part of living, and it's a part of the struggle, and understanding that doubt doesn't have to be our enemy, that doubt can actually be our friend if we will engage doubt in a healthy way. And so we'll look at that next week. But the struggle is real. And let's look at Job's struggle, shall we? Job chapter 1, beginning with verse 1. In the land of Uz, there lived a man whose name was Job. This man was blameless and upright. He was blameless. You couldn't find any dirt on him if you tried. And this idea, this phrase demonstrating and characterizing his character will come up more than once He was blameless and upright. He had a spine. He did what was right. Whether people were looking or not looking. He did the right thing. He feared God. He worshiped God. He respected God. He had a proper understanding of who God was and who he was. We'll see that Job was a very important man. Job was he was rich. He was blessed by God. Others look at him, and Scripture will see, says that he was a great man. He was the greatest man in his region. But he didn't. He wasn't God. He feared God and he shunned evil. Not only did Job do the right thing, but he made sure that he didn't do the wrong thing. We will see later in the book of Job that he made a covenant with his eyes not to look lustfully on a woman. He's like, I'm not going to even entertain the thought. I won't let that go beyond, no, I'm going to put that aside. He shunned evil. He didn't give it a front row seat. Didn't say, hey, I'll just kind of see how close I can get without getting burned. He shunned it. He put it away. So, in the book of Job, as we start, we're seeing the character of this man, Job, which is important to understand because we see that soon a bunch of suffering is going to come into his life. And because of that suffering, there are a bunch of assumptions that are made by others, which we'll plan to look at in week 3. Because oftentimes when we go through a struggle, there are those that are trying to help but aren't allowed to help. And Job has some friends, and Job has a wife, and we'll see a little bit of her interaction even today as we take a look at chapter 1 and part of chapter 2. And sometimes our friends aren't the most help, and let's just be real honest with ourselves. Sometimes we're not the most help to our friends when they're in struggles. So in week 3, we'll look at how can we be a better help to those that are struggling. As we continue on, verse 2, he had 7 sons and 3 daughters, and he owned 7,000 sheep, 3,000 camels, 500 yoke of oxen, and 500 donkeys, and had a large number of servants. He was the greatest man among all the people of the East. And so we get a pretty good idea that Job is special, and he's loaded. He's got all this property, all these animals. He's got a lot of servants. You can just say life is good. And maybe you're there right now. Life is good. Or maybe you've been there before. Life is awesome. Like, this is great. Well, then we go to verse 6. One day, the angels came to present themselves before the Lord, and Satan also came with them. Job is a very practical, helpful book. Some great things in understanding suffering, pain, things that we go through in life that are very difficult, hardships, adversity, and how to overcome that, how to walk through that, how to trust God in the midst of that. But the book of Job also has some great theology and some great understanding that is important for us to pull from. And so I just want us to see in verse 7, the Lord said to Satan, where have you come from? You see, Satan still has to answer to God. They are not equal. They are not opposite ends of the force, good and evil. They're not equal. Satan is not as equally powerful as God. Satan is not equally as evil as God is holy. God is infinitely more holy even than Satan is evil. As evil as Satan is. And Satan has to report to God. Has to answer for what he's doing. Where have you come from? You just kind of picture this discussion, this dialogue. Did God know where Satan had come from? That's a rhetorical question, right? Same as God knew where Adam and Eve were in the garden after they sinned. Where are you? I know exactly where you're at. Just going to see how you're going to answer for yourself. Where did you come from? Satan answered the Lord. From roaming throughout the earth, going back and forth on it. Pretty vague answer. And then we see this. Then the Lord said to Satan, have you considered my servant Job? God knows exactly what Satan's up to. You're trying to make people fall. You're trying to make people stumble. Trying to get them to think that they don't need me in their life. Hey, how about this guy named Job? I'm going to just pause right here. Even though Job is completely unaware of what's going on, Job's completely unaware of this dialogue that's taking place in the heavenly realms, this feels a little bit like a discussion that maybe a dad would have at the time. He sees a bully in school and they're picking on other kids and like, hey, you think you're so tough? Why don't you try my kid? You think you're all that? Why don't you come over here? Try my son. And there's part of me that's like, hey, yeah, thanks for the vote of confidence. There's another part of me that's like, don't bring me into this. Okay. Now, I'm thankful my dad never did that with me. He knew that I would get my clock cleaned. I wasn't going to win hardly any fights. Okay? So I learned how to be a peacemaker. I learned how to get along with people and not cause problems and stuff like that, and do things to help people maybe make better choices without threatening to beat them up or whatever. But my middle brother, Lester, who some of you know, Lester was one of those that in school, when there was another student that would act out and maybe pick on some of the other students, teacher would recognize that and they would move that student over and have them set by my brother. Because my brother wouldn't put up with it, in one way or another, my brother would correct the problem. Like, you start picking on my brother, or he sees you picking on somebody else, he starts smacking you. You smack him, he's going to smack you back. And he just had that temperament. And we see like God's like, hey, have you considered Job? There is no one on earth like him. He is blameless and upright, a man who fears God and shuns evil. So even God himself gives the same definition or the same characterization of Job as what we have in verse 1. And here's Satan's reply. Does Job fear God for nothing? Have you not put a hedge around him? Now, let's go into this for just a little bit. Have you not put a hedge around him? How many of you, when you hear the word or see the word hedge, you think of greenery? You think of shrubbery? And you think, really, God, you're going to put a hedge around him? Like, that's going to keep Satan away? A hedge? Well, it worked! I don't know what it was, but basically there's this idea that God has put a shield around Job. God has said, Job is off limits. My hand is on him. You can't touch him. And you can't touch his family, and you can't touch his stuff. Like, you put a hedge around him and his household and everything he has. You have blessed the work of his hands. You've blessed him. And so he blesses you. You've honored him, so he honors you. But, now stretch out your hand and strike everything he has, and he will surely curse you to your face. Does Satan know Job will do this? No. Satan assumes Job will do this. Why? Because that's human nature, right? When God is good to us, we say God is good. When things aren't going good, we go, what's up, God? You changed. God, I worship you when things are going good. God, what's wrong with you? Where are you? And we start blaming him and even cursing him. And Satan says, he'll even curse you to your face. The challenge is on. So if you know the story, if you follow along and you continue reading in chapter 1, God says, okay, you can go ahead, I'm going to remove the hedge. But here's the deal. You can't touch Job. You can touch his family, you can touch his possessions, but you can't touch Job. Job is off limits. And we follow along, and we see right after that, we see servant comes up to Job and says, hey Job, I want you to know that all of your camels have died and all of your servants except for me, I was the only one to be able to escape. Hey Job, Just want you to know that all of your oxen and all of your donkeys had died, and all of the servants that were watching them, and I was the only one that can survive, and I came to let you know. And while he's talking, another one says, hey Job, I would just want you to know, you need to know this, you've lost all of these. I was the only servant to survive. And then finally, I mean this isn't a break in between. As he was still talking, we see that like 3-4 times. While he was still talking, another one comes up. Can you imagine being hit 4 different times? 4 different servants come and tell you, you've lost all of your donkeys, you've lost all of your camels, you've lost all of... And then the final one, the 4th one, comes and says, your children are all together. 4 corners of the house came down, and all of them are gone. They're all dead. The servants that were with them, that were serving them and spending time with them, they're gone too. I was the only one to survive. Can you imagine? I mean, talk about being hit from every direction. We have to say, like when it's raining, it's pouring. Some of you, that's the middle of Strugglesville. When it's like, I've got this going on, I'm trying to pay the bills over here, but now I've got this child acting out, or I've got this going on at home, but then I've got this at work, and I've got this going on, and now I find out that I need to go back and have another test, and I've got this going on, and like, when it rains, it pours, and it's one thing after another, and we start going, and we're like wondering, God, what is up? God is good. All the time. But right now, I'm not so sure. And Job is in Strugglesville. At this, Job got up, tore his robe, and shaved his head. He got up. The news had knocked him down. The news had knocked him over. Can you blame him? I mean, he just lost 10 children. Forget about the stinking camels. And yes, they stink. Forget about the camels. Forget about the oxen. He just lost 10 children. It knocked him over. It knocked him down. He got up. He tore his robe. That's a sign of grieving. It's a sign to say, wow, I am broken. He tore his robe and he shaved his head. I'm in significant grief here. And I want to pause right there, and we'll continue on with the rest in just a minute, but I want you to know the struggle is real, so don't pretend it's not. We've got this thing in our society, and I shared with those that are going through our iLife class with me. We've got this thing in our society, and it's especially true for men. That we have to pretend that we're okay. I'm good. How's things going? And even when things are going horrible, we still say, I'm good. Never let them see us sweat. We kind of remember back in the old days, like, don't cry, right? Any of you have your dad tell you, don't cry, I'll give you something to cry about? So then it's okay to cry because he gave me something? You're like, at what point can I cry? We were told growing up we couldn't cry because of physical pain. Once we got to like a certain age, you can't cry because of physical pain. I'm sorry, but if you get smacked in the nose, you're going to get tears in your eyes. Don't believe me? Come here. But we were told, and this is by a very guy that I would consider pretty macho, my dad, it's okay to cry when you're sad. When something happens, somebody dies, a pet dies, it's okay to cry. I appreciate that about my dad. Saying the struggle is real, so don't pretend it's not. But too often in society, we bury that. We say, no, I'm okay. I'm going to press on. I'm good. I'm going to put on my smiling face. and I'm going to just press on. And we try to pretend like we're okay, when the truth of the matter is we're not okay. Job, I think, gives us a great picture here that it's okay to not be okay. When the struggle is real, don't pretend that it's not. He tore his robe, he shaved his head. Like this, I'm hurting. And I'm not afraid to let other people know I'm struggling. We go back. But then he fell to the ground in worship and said, "Naked I came from my mother's womb, and naked I will depart. The Lord gave, and the Lord has taken away." Does this sound familiar? May the name of the Lord be praised. Some translations say, He giveth and He taketh away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. Let me go back to this. I came from my mother's womb. Naked I came, naked I go. There's something to keep in mind. The struggle is a real part of being human. It's part of being human. Why do we struggle? Because we're human. Well, why do bad things happen? Because we're human. Now, I'll tell you this, and this might be helpful. Sometimes bad things happen because we're broken. How many of you realize you're broken? Sometimes bad things happen because we're broken. Sometimes bad things happen because we make bad decisions. We make bad choices. We make sinful choices. And with sinful choices, bad choices, guess what? Often there's bad consequences, right? For the wages of sin is death. Like, there's consequences here. You act out in a way, you be a jerk to somebody at school, guess what? Usually there's consequences to that. You do something illegal, guess what? There's usually consequences to that. Like, oh, I don't understand why this is happening. Well, maybe it's because you're broken and you made some boneheaded decisions. At least one person has got a little self-awareness here. Sometimes bad things happen because other people are broken. Well, we can all say amen to that. Like, we don't want to admit our own junk, but we'll admit somebody else's, right? It's easier to see other people's junk than it is in our own, but that's okay. But sometimes, and here's the truth of the matter, sometimes bad things happen. Sometimes we struggle because of other people's behavior, their choices, their decisions. It's part of being human. I don't like it. You don't like it. But it is what it is. It goes with being human. Sometimes we struggle and we go through difficulty, we go through hardship, we go through adversity, not so much because we're broken or somebody else is broken, but because the world is broken. When sin entered the world, it messed up the world. We didn't have earthquakes and hurricanes and all of that in the Garden of Eden. It was paradise. But there are some things that happen because the world is broken. Is God behind all of these and all of that? Consequences? Sometimes yes. Sometimes there are consequences and God is behind those consequences. God is trying to redirect us and bring us back to Him. Does God even use natural disasters for that? What we call natural disasters? Yeah, I think He can, but let's just be very careful in assigning something to God and saying that God did it. Because there are a bunch of people that just got swept up in that, and you're saying God did it. God allowed it. I can go with that. Did God do it? I don't know. I'm not going to answer for Him. Okay. But sometimes there are different things that happen. Job said, you know what? It's part of being human. Naked I came, naked I go. I realize that there's going to be an end, and what I have now I won't have in the end. I came naked, and naked I'll go. Struggling is part of being human. Well, let's go back to Job chapter 2. It begins with another account of the angels coming before the Lord. And Satan gets the same question as before and gives the same answer. Where do you come from? Just kind of going here and there. I'm just looking. What brings you in here today? I'm just looking. He says, well, hey, have you considered Job? He's blameless and upright. Oh, and by the way, you gave him your best shot, and guess what? He's still standing. Yep, you knocked him down, but he got back up. He didn't deny me, didn't curse me. He's still going. And Satan comes back at him and says, well, you know, you let me attack his belongings, his livestock, his children, but you know what? Skin for skin. Skin for skin. You let me touch him. You let me get in. Verse 4, chapter 2. Skin for skin, Satan replied, a man will give all he has for his own life. But now stretch out your hand and strike his flesh and bones, and he will surely curse you to your face. Okay, it didn't work the last time, but I guarantee, I'm all in on this one now, Satan's saying. I'm all in. You do this, you let me get Job, and he will curse you. God says, you know what? You're on. You can touch it, but you can't kill it. You do what you want to do, but you can't kill it. So we see that Job gets infected. Afflicted with painful sores from the soles of his feet to the crown of his head. So much so that Job took a piece of broken pottery and just scraped himself with it as he sat among the ashes. Have you ever been there, like, have a crazy itch that is just, you dig at it, and the more you dig, the worse it gets? I mean, Job was already in the middle of Strugglesville. He had lost everything that he had. And now he's got these boils from head to toe, just driving you insane. I mean, like that burning, itchy feeling, that's just even with me saying burning, itchy feeling, some of you are starting to like how physically debilitating, emotionally draining, socially, how that causes people to like distance themselves, like, yeah, I'm staying away from that guy. Job's in rough times. Job is definitely in the middle of Strugglesville. So much so, verse 9, his wife said to him, are you still maintaining your integrity? Curse God and die. Seems like I'm counting on it. His wife said, you might as well curse God and die. Someone said, basically, Job's wanting to say to his wife, why don't you curse God and die? Like, you're not helping me right now. Curse God and die. He replied, you are talking like a foolish woman. Probably not the line that you want to take from this passage and take home with you. Okay. You're talking like a foolish woman. What is he saying? You're talking as if you don't know who God is. You're talking like you've completely cut God out of the equation. The fool says in his heart, there is no God. You're talking like a foolish person. Shall we accept good from God? In not trouble? In all this, Job did not sin in what he said. Third thing I want us to see, the struggle is real, but so is God. The struggle is real, but so is God. Job was pointing his wife back and said, yeah, I know the struggle is real, and I don't like it right now. This isn't any fun for me either. But I still know that just as the struggle is real, so is God. I still put my faith in Him. I still trust Him. Yeah, the struggle is real. But so is God. When we come to struggles in life, I have found that people respond to struggles a couple different ways. As we think of struggles, and maybe you want to just draw a line on your paper somewhere. When we come to struggles, there are those that, like I said earlier, they just want to bury their struggles. We're just going to bury it. I'm going to bury it. I'm not going to talk about it. Don't bring it up. How are you? I'm great. Thank you very much. Doing better than you. Thank you very much. We'll just bury it. We're not going to address it. We're not going to say we're hurting. We're not going to say that we're struggling. That's a sign of weakness or whatever. We're not going to do that. Vulnerability, whatever it is, we're going to bury it. Okay? So there are those in this room. That is the way that you typically handle struggles. When you go through Strugglesville, you find yourself in Strugglesville, you just pretend that you're not there, you pretend like you know what you're doing, and that you'll find your way out on your own, you're just going to bury it. You don't ask for directions, and we don't do that, and this is how, not always, but for the most part, I'll stereotype. This is typically how guys like to deal with struggles. We'll bury it. This is how I oftentimes will deal with struggles. I'll bury it. I'm the pastor, I can't struggle. I'm the husband, I can't struggle. I'm the father, I can't struggle. I can't have adversity, I can't have pain, I can't have this. I got it all together. I mean, look at me after all. I'm the pastor. People are looking up to me. If I'm broken, how can I help them? And so we bury our struggles. There are others, though, that get buried by their struggles. It's overwhelming. I can't handle it. Defeated, defeated, defeated. It's all over. I might as well die. I chipped a nail. So we just pray right now. And it might be something small. It may be something very significant. The struggle is real. The struggle is real. And sometimes we allow the struggle to bury us. And we have no hope. And we act as if there's no future, there's no way out, there's no way that life can ever be okay. There's no way that we can ever be okay. And I think Job would point to us another different direction, a way of seeing things from a different perspective. And that's what if, instead of burying the struggle, well, what if we would see that as something that God can use to draw us closer to Him. And something that God could use for His honor and glory. Something that would put us closer to God, but also something that God could use then for us to be able to point to Him. Our story could bring Him glory. What if, instead of us bearing our struggles, bearing our pain, bearing our difficulty, bearing our disappointment, what if instead of burying that or allowing that to bury us, what if, like Job, and it's not easy, but what if we would allow that struggle to become a step that God would use for our growth and His glory? I think it's possible. We see it in the life of Job. And we can know that the struggle is a step God can use for your growth and His glory. Does that mean that that's why you're going through the struggle? Like God has given me this struggle so that I'll grow, so that He'll get glory? Is that why I'm going through this? I don't know. Sometimes it is. That's the reason. To grow you up. Sometimes that's the reason, because He's going to draw glory to Himself through this. Sometimes that's the reason. Sometimes that's not the why, but it's what can happen. It's not what got you into the situation, but it can be the result of the situation. I want to take that question, that kids just ask from about the first time that they can talk. Why? 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 And you give them an answer, and what's their next question? Why? Why? Are we any different? Why, God? Why? Why? So let's take that word, and I don't know why I'm humming so bad up here, Kevin. Is it humming out there too? Let's take that word why and use the three letters from why to help us out, to help us to use our struggle as a step and to allow God to use it as a step for our growth and for His glory. And instead of asking the question why, let's ask the question what. What can I learn from this situation? What can I learn from this experience? What can I learn about myself going through this? What can I learn about the decisions that I made or haven't made? What can I learn? What can I learn about others? In relationships, what can I learn about God? What, God, would you have me to learn about you in this struggle, in this time of difficulty? What? I think a lot better question to ask than why. Because there are a lot of times that we won't ever get the answer of why this side of heaven. But we can find out the what. The what. The second one, the hope. The H is hope. Always keep in mind, no matter what struggle you may be going through now or in the future, always keep in mind that God is God. Job keeps coming back to this. God, I believe that you are the great and awesome God. God, you are God. God, you are God. You're God. You're God. He keeps coming back to that. You are sovereign God. You are over all. Nothing is too difficult for you. God, you are able to do this. I know things look bleak, but you are the God of possibilities. Nothing is impossible for you. Folks, we've got to have hope. And we have hope when we point and look at who God is. And we're reminded of what God's capable of. And we say, God, I believe that you are able to do this. You gave sight to the blind. You made the lame to walk. You even raised the dead back to life. God, you are able. I know you're able to work in my life. I know you're able to provide in this time, in this circumstance, in this situation, that you can work, that you can do things. You're God, and I believe that. And so we need to have hope. But the third part is also important, and that's that we need to yield. God, I trust that you are good. I trust that you're good. I trust that you know all things. I trust that you see the end and you know the end from the beginning. You know ultimately what's best for me and what's best for those that I love. And we yield to Him. We say, I am the potter. You are the potter, I am the clay. And we yield and we say, God, I'm yours. And we yield and we say, God, have your way. Not my will, but yours be done. Whatever you need to do to grow me and bring glory to yourself. What? Hope in you. And look to see our struggle become a step that God uses for our growth and for His glory. I'm going to invite our praise team to make their way forward. Invite our ushers to make their way forward as well. I don't know what struggle you find yourself having today. I don't know if you feel like you've been hit from 4 different directions like Job did. But I know the struggle is real. I just encourage you, don't pretend that it's not. It's part of why we gather together. is so that we can lift up each other's burdens, so that we can pray for one another, so that we can encourage one another. Don't be afraid to seek professional help. Some struggles, you don't just need somebody sitting next to you in the chair in the church service. You need somebody sitting in a position that they know some greater truths. They have more experience, more training. Highly would encourage you to go to a Christian counselor, somebody that is basing their decisions and their instruction and their feedback on Scripture and a biblical worldview. My office is open. My phone number is there in the bulletin. I'm available through email and otherwise. Ladies, I point you to my wife. She has a wealth of knowledge and experience, loves the Lord, loves you, and would like to come alongside of you and be a support and a help, an encourager. Also is very aware of her limitations and knows that she can't solve everybody's problems or struggles, and will look to do what she can to help point you in the right direction and give you some resources or somebody else that you can talk to. But get help. The struggle is real, so don't pretend it's not. It's part of being human. We all go through it. Keep in mind, the struggle is real, but so is God. So ask what? Trust in Him, hope. Know what He can do, know what He's capable of, and then yield to Him. Father, thank you that you are good all the time, even when circumstances aren't. Even when we can't see your goodness in our lives. Lord, we trust that you are good. And because you are God, you are worthy of our praise. So Father, this is right where the rubber meets the road. This is where we're at today. There are those that are here that are struggling. God, I pray that you would give them hope. That something that was shared today would speak right to their heart. That they would hear from you. That we would take whatever step we need to take. Not that the struggle is going to automatically disappear, that there would be hope amidst that struggle. That we would know that you're there with us amidst that struggle. And Father, as we give unto you what you have given to us, Lord, that you have blessed the gift and giver, we pray this in and for your name.